Let's please give it up for our guest speaker tonight. Everyone on their feet. This is what we do here at Startup Grind. None of our speakers get paid, so at least we can do is give them a big welcome. Please welcome Jason Calacanis.
I knew at some point I would get a standing ovation. Thank you. It was a first for everything.
I'm on. Cool. Jason, thanks for coming. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Is it your first time in Sydney?
No, I was here in 2008. I guess you had a conference, CBIT, and they had offered to fly me out here. And 10 years ago, I was like, you'll pay for my ticket? Like, yeah, we'll pay for your ticket in business class. I was like, I've never been in business class. Yes. And so, yeah, it's been 10 years. And, over the last couple of years, we've been doing the Launch Festival, last decade, and it's gotten quite large in San Francisco and a little bit unruly, 15,000 people, and it's like a giant event. But we're pretty saturated there, and everybody knows who we are in San Francisco and the Bay Area, so we have pretty perfect deal flow. If a company's raising money, we're going to know about it in all likelihood, and hopefully have a chance to invest in it. But we're here because we're looking for companies to invest in. And we believe that almost every great city has 2 or 3 companies in the Goldilocks zone. And the Goldilocks zone for us, not too hot, not too cold. Too hot, you've raised tens of millions or gone public. You don't need our help. Too cold, you have an idea. Like everybody in the room has 1,000 of a day, 300 of which you have when you're sleeping and don't remember. So we're looking for people who have their products in an MVP, minor traction. So this very cool product, what was it called?
TimeChi.
TimeChi.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough name. We may have to work on that part. But the idea is brilliant. I thought that was a brilliant idea because people are obsessive with this Tim Ferriss, Pomodoro system, optimizing themselves. And I love that you press the button and the light tells everybody to not interrupt you.
Yeah, and I don't think my attention span has got longer over the last few years. I think it's got considerably shorter.
So that would be an example of a company that's a little bit too early, but that we'd want to meet and then see if the founder quits. Because it turns out that the thing that kills companies is not running out of money. It's that the founder quits. Many companies run out of money, founder doesn't give up, and then 2 months after they ran out of money, they figure something out and money shows up, and they keep going. So, great question. You didn't ask a question yet. I just started talking. I'm a little bit delirious right now. Truth be told, ask me how long I've been in Sydney.
How long have you been in Sydney for?
12 hours.
Nice. So
I landed at 7 a.m. I slept a little bit, and then I watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes of The Handmaid's Tale. Has anybody seen this yet? So I've been having like a waking nightmare kind of all day. I mean, I have PTSD.
Yeah.
Not from the flight, but from The Handmaid's Tale. It's a bad choice.
Well, look, I always knew this interview was going to be very interesting. So, hey, let's just see where it goes.
Thank you to SendGrid. I use that product at inside.com.
Fantastic.
It's fantastic, reliable, affordable, and they have a great starter package for you all in the crowd. They give you the first 1 million emails free. Just use the code Jason. You turned that code on yet?
I can do it as soon as I get off here.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. Done. It's great doing business with you. This is fantastic.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, look, Jason, let's step back to you growing up and just a little bit about your background. You've obviously got this sort of entrepreneurial spirit just running through your veins. If you look at your resume, you've done a lot of different things and had some successes and had some failures. Did you come from a family of entrepreneurs, or did you just kind of pop out that way?
No, I did. My dad had a bar when I was growing up, and it was in Brooklyn in the 70s and 80s. Mm-hmm. And my dad would pick us up from school, take us to the bar at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, sit me and my 2 brothers down and say, polish the silverware, and then proceed to give us $1 each. And then my next job after that, after polishing the silverware, and we had to set the tables. By the way, this is at the age of 6 or 7. And then then after that, my job was to sweep up the floors and do the porter work. So I'd go with my grandfather, God rest his soul, who was a firefighter in New York, in Brooklyn. And then in his later years, would do the porter work. And he used the word porter. You see, I'm the porter. I do janitorial arts. And so I studied the janitorial arts, which was basically mopping up the bar and cleaning up. At 7 a.m., we would go to 6:05 Mass, and there'd be like 8 people in the Mass. And then we'd walk over to the bar at 7. And so my dad would still be there. And it was insane. And one of my earliest childhood memories was getting to the bar, and there was a commotion going on. And my dad was running a guy out of the bar by his belt and had the back of his neck and smashed his face into a mailbox. And his face exploded, and he crawled under the car. The guy had stolen. You don't steal from people in Brooklyn. And my dad is huffing and puffing. He was like a bull. And he looks over and he sees me. And he looks at the ground, and he looks at the mailbox, there's blood on it. He says, "Don't just stand there. Clean it up." I said, "You got it." And I went and I got some hot water and I cleaned up the blood. And that's where I got a lot of my work ethic from, was, it's a unique motivational tactic. But I watched him struggle with that bar, and then when the bar, when 1987, he had a second bar and the stock market crashed in the United States, and he lost everything, and he was over $100,000 in debt to the IRS, the tax collector, for the alcohol commission for tax. And so I went to the bar one day, and the Fed showed up with raid jackets, shotguns, and they took the bar and put locks on it. This is 3-4 weeks before I started college. Wow. My dad said, "I'm sorry, son, I have no money. You're on your own." So it's okay, Pop, it was a good run. And so then I went to college, and I had to switch from going during the day to going at night. And I just said to myself, I'm never going to fail. I just made myself that promise at that point. I'm going to work my way through anything. That's never going to happen to me. And so I started working hard, and I went to school at night. So I switched to night school instead of day school. And then I worked 3 jobs, 60 hours a week, went to school at night 4 nights a week, carried a full credit load. It took me 4.5 years to graduate college. And I would be a bartender, but then I started fixing laser printers. Worked my way up from fixing the laser printers to putting network cards in computers, plugging them into the internet. You get the idea. This is the early 90s. And it was interesting because at that time in New York, people started playing with CD-ROMs and online services, and then I started a magazine called Silicon Alley Reporter, which was a photocopy newsletter, because in my deranged mind, we were never affluent. We were kind of barely middle class, even though we owned the bar. They lived, my parents, month to month, week to week, and then they lost everything, so it was pretty harsh. And I would ride the train into Manhattan, and I said, I want to be rich and powerful, because I was neither of those things. And so I tried to just study and reverse engineer it, because I didn't know anybody rich or powerful. Where I came from was the last stop, literally on the train in Brooklyn. The cheapest houses were on the last stop. It took 1 hour and 10 minutes to get to Manhattan. And so in my deranged mind, I thought, well, the people on the covers of magazines are powerful. So I started looking at magazines, and I said, I'm going to be on the cover of magazines. So who's on the cover? I was like, well, I'm not a musician. I'm not an actor. But I started seeing the business magazines, and I started thinking about that. And I said, wait a second. Somebody is in charge of the magazine and picks who's on the cover. That's who I want to be. Because that person has the real power. Now, I don't know that that's actually correct. I don't actually think the person in the magazine is the most powerful person, but to me that made sense. So I started a magazine about online services and CD-ROMs, and that got my career started, and I happened to be in the right place at the right time, the internet.
So you, I worked at CompuServe as my first job while I was at uni, while I was at college, and I saw CompuServe and AOL and these online services and just went, this is it. I mean, did you have that similar thing where this is it?
Exactly. It was very clear to me because CD-ROMs were the other big thing. So you had online services that were using 300, 1200 baud modems. So when the text on the screen came up, it would be going just slightly slower than you could read it, But then when you had a CD-ROM, it would load, you could whoa, and it had music and audio. And there was a company in New York at the time called Voyager that was making multimedia CD-ROMs, where they would mix music and text and video, and it was like, whoa, this is mind-blowing. That you had to add a CD-ROM to your computer, but it's pretty clear to me that would be big. And having a job as a journalist, I was just talking to a pretty savvy journalist tonight. I did an interview, and I said, what you're doing with me right now, asking me questions, I know what you're doing. You're asking me very open-ended questions, and you're pretending you don't know the answer, even though I'm the 100th angel investor you've interviewed in the last 10 years. You know the answers, but you're playing dumb to hear me talk, to open me up. So I say something that's notable so you have a story. He's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I said, that's exactly what I do with founders.
Nice.
You'll be a great investor at some point. And so the people who are great at journalism, I think are the best investors because they can ask questions like, why are you doing this? And why would this idea work now? And these kind of open-ended questions and then listen. So journalism was a great proving ground for me. To circle back around to my dad, when I had the magazine, it got to 12 million in revenue, 75 employees. I was hot shit in New York. I was on the Charlie Rose show. Had a New Yorker did a feature on me. I was top of the town when New York was on the top of the game, 99, 2000.
Yeah.
And then the stock market crashed in 2000. And I lost all my money. And I had to lay off 70 of 75 people. And exactly what happened to my dad, with the exception of potentially having to go to jail and having $100,000 in tax debt, happened to me. Wow. And I was just basically oh yeah, that's the cliff Dad fell off on. Yep, I'm hanging over it. Fuck. And that was this great paradoxical moment for me, oh wow, we are our father's sons and this, or mom's daughter, whatever it is. But I pulled myself out of that tailspin and started Weblogs Inc., which was my blogging company. And 18 months after we started Engadget, Autoblog, and Joystick, AOL bought it for $30 million. And then I was a genius again.
Yeah.
And so, you can't focus too much on the down times because you forget them and you laugh about them. And then the only thing people care about is your wins. If I didn't invest in Uber, I didn't get to write the book. And I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I mean, I've invested in 5 other unicorns, of course, but not one that's a decacorn. So you have to be a little bit self-aware. There's a lot of randomness to life. But, as I tell founders I invest in, 2 out of 3 startups fail. So this is your first one. If it doesn't work out, we'll do 2 more.
You, at college, you studied a degree in psychology. But I suppose you also studied a degree in psychology in your dad's bar. Did you learn anything from the college degree that has helped you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, entrepreneurship and life, psychology is a major factor. In fact, my chosen profession was going to be law enforcement. So before I went to college, my brother and I took the police department exam in New York City. And literally the month before my dad lost his bar and the month before I went to Fordham University, he decided to go into the cops. And I said, you know what, I'm going to try this college thing. My dad didn't go to college. And I'll see if I can get it done, maybe. And if not, I'll see you in the academy. You'll be a year ahead of me. You'll be a detective before me. And then when I graduated college, I was like, I'm going to go into forensic psychology and be in the FBI. So that was pretty much my plan, go to forensic psychology. But yeah, there's a lot of psychology to being an entrepreneur and also to being a gambler / investor, which is basically the same thing. And so I realized I have an incredibly addictive, gambling, risk-taking personality, but I've channeled it in the right place. I play high-stakes poker, as you know, like very high stakes, like crazy, insane madness, and that is half as risk-taking as what I do in my day job. Yeah. Angel investing is much, much riskier and much crazier than me playing poker. If I played poker for a living, it would be a lot less risky for me, based on the odds.
So this year I've done one angel investment. And one could argue that if I'm putting chips on the roulette table that I don't have enough ammo to play that game properly. How much ammo do you need to play the game properly?
It's a good question. One of the reasons I wrote the book was because I saw so many people get into angel investing and do it wrong. And I had made my own set of mistakes, and I had also realized what's important and how to do it right. And so in the book, I just outlined for people, listen, if you're going to get into angel investing, start slow, make a lot of small bets while you're learning. Just like poker. Anybody here play poker? Raise your hand if you play poker. Okay. Now, if you play poker, you wouldn't go to the table with the highest stakes in the casino and say, I'm going to learn. At the $100, $200 game where you have to sit down with $5,000, because you would quickly lose that $5,000 in the first 15 minutes. What you would do is play at the $15, $10, $20, $30 tournament, and you'd lose it in 15 minutes or an hour, and you go, okay. That was my coaching for the day. So start small, learn, and make a decent number of bets, but behave as if you made a big bet. So put $2,000 into a company through a syndicate, or $5,000 or $10,000. Do it 20 times. Don't invest money you can't afford to lose, and then learn. And then also understand that if you're investing in companies before they've got their product done, most of those companies will never finish their product. So if you're a new angel, why not invest in the companies that have already launched? Most companies are raising 5, 6, 7 rounds of funding before their Series A. Like literally 3, 4, 5 rounds of funding. And so there's no rush. Take your time, learn the game, and network. And, you know, if I could go back in time, that would have been a better move for me. And then also, when you do have a winner, you want to go 4 times, 5 times in it. I think it's the second best job, angel investing. The first best job is being a founder. But being a founder is infinitely more stressful than being an angel investor. As an angel investor, you're like, well, that company's not going to make it. You did good. Let me know when the next company's starting, and the person's curled up in a ball crying. And you're like, what are you doing now? You want to go to the movies? And it's like, it's over, I fucked up, I lost everybody's And you're like, yeah, but I invested in Thumbtack and Wealthfront and Robinhood. It's cool, kid, don't worry about it. Yeah, but nobody will ever invest in me again. And you're just like, your photo sharing app failed. Get up off the floor, dust yourself off, go do some yoga, whatever you got to do. Come back in 6 months with another idea. Let's get back in the game, right? People take it like it's life and death, when in fact it's the furthest thing from life and death. And so that same brother who went into the cops is now a firefighter, and we talk. And sometimes he calls me. He's like, I read the story about you, or I saw you on CNBC. I'm kind of blown away. It's like mind-blowing for me. And I was like, tell me about the last building you ran into that was on fire. And he tells me these stories, and I'm like, Josh, I don't think you get it. Like, what I do every day is just infinitely simplistic and easy compared to what you do every day. Like, I would shit my pants if I ran into a burning building, and you do that for a living. Like, it's crazy.
So you mentioned a good thing with founders, an interesting point, and it's a word that always rings in my head, is resilience.
Yeah.
and that ability to pick yourself up again. Is that something you're really looking for? Is that something that, like you mentioned, I might get them on the second or third go because they've built some resilience, or is that something just from the neighborhood you grew up in?
I always think resilience is the defining characteristic of the winning founders, because what people forget is that it never gets easier. We delude ourselves into thinking it gets easier as founders, as investors, as humans. The struggle gets harder. I'll give you 2 examples. Zuckerberg fought for a decade to get to over 1 billion people on his social networks and fend off competitors. This was the worst year of his life. He's worth 50 billion. Wow, but literally, he's staring at the ceiling, grinding his teeth right now. Everybody hates me. I may have caused Donald Trump to be president. Donald Trump may start a fucking nuclear war with this other maniac. He's got to sit there and live with himself and how hard this is. And then Elon Musk, I'm going to try to make electric cars. Okay, now I finally got one to $55,000. I sold $500,000 of them, and I'm having a hard time getting to $5,000 a week, and I'm at 2,700, and literally every press member is throwing a rock at the back of my head every day while I'm sleeping on the factory floor. You would think it gets easier. No, the problems become more complex, the stakes get higher, and the venom and hate and detractors become, tenfold. So it doesn't get easier. It gets harder. Now, you may get rich along the way, you may get famous, powerful, you may be on the cover of a magazine, you get to give high fives, everybody loves you. But as a founder, it does not get easier. And resiliency and the ability to have hope and faith that you will get through is critically important. Most people fold under pressure and they don't keep going. And, for me, that's one of the things I'm super routing for. And just when I'm meeting people is trying to determine if they're resilient. There's a couple ways to figure it out, but it's not perfect. But one of the ways is when you ask somebody why they're doing something, sometimes you'll hear because Microsoft isn't, and I think that way I can make this product that will, they'll have to buy us. And they talk about the exit and or I think I can make a lot of money. If you're doing this to make a lot of money, don't. There's other ways that make much more certain ways to make more money. Literally being a poker pro is a better move. Yeah. You have a higher odds. I know that sounds crazy, but literally if you study poker for 2 or 3 years, play at the low stakes table, you will make more money than a startup. Almost guaranteed.
Do you think some founders confuse resilience with that kind of blind faith of kind of the lemming going off the cliff? Where I know the data's telling me everyone doesn't like my product, but I believe in it, and they kind of keep going.
Being delusional is also a really good prerequisite for success. You don't want if most people knew exactly how hard this shit was, they would not start the company. That's why in a lot of cases, young people have these extraordinary results because they're just too naive to know exactly how insane the odds are against them, so they do it anyway. And so there's a whole group of investors who are like, I only want to invest in 20-year-olds. I only want to invest in these young, naive people who have these big open minds and big open eyes and who will try to do something that is just insane. Statistically, it's not true. Most of the founders who do breakout success that are in that 35 to 45 peak career, that's a much better bet to make. But you do have often these crazy young founders. So I don't mind a little delusion. Being delusional, if you have a lot of skills and you have a great work ethic, that can be good. Being delusional with no skill, that's not good. And that's what I see a lot of. Right now it's tourist season in Silicon Valley. I don't know about here, but everybody wants to be a founder in Silicon Valley. Everybody wants to get rich. And they're just I'm like, what do you do? And they're like, I'm the CEO. I'm CEOing. I'm like, great. What did you do today? It's like, oh, well, I watched a TED video, and then I was on Hacker News, and then I did a webinar, and I was like, well, what exactly is your skill? Well, I'm the idea guy. I'm the idea person. And it's like, well, maybe get a couple of skills. Can you design? Can you sell? Can you write? Can you communicate? Can you hire? Write code? What exactly is your skill? And when I see people who have no skill but being like the CEOing, it's a little bit troubling to me. What I try to explain to young people is the skill you need to refine is your ability to add new skills. So I have been thinking about this a lot. I believe you can get up to what I'll call moderate proficiency in almost any skill in hours to days to weeks because of this new website, which you should bookmark. It's called YouTube. And there's another one that's come out called Quora. And between these two sites, if you don't know how to do something, there is somebody who wanted to get social credit, and be an influencer, who's literally explained it. So in the last 2 or 3 months, I decided I would learn guitar, tennis, and backgammon. And I watched YouTube videos, and I'm like, how to hit a tennis ball. Okay, video's over, great. And then I walk over, I turn on the tennis machine, and I have the tennis machine shoot balls at me. And then I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. And then I type in, what is a backhand? How do you hold a and like literally there's somebody who's like, here's how the angle works. And I'm like, okay, literally I can hit a tennis ball now. And then my wife came down and said, would you start taking lessons or something? I was like, no, I watched like 12 YouTube videos. Then my dad, who's a big backgammon player, he came out and I beat him in backgammon. We were playing for like $1 a point. I got $4 off him. We were going back and forth, 24 to 20, then 16 to 20. We were just going back and forth for like this 4 or 5 hour match. And he gave me the $4. I still got the $4. It was pretty sweet.
No, the idea that information is out there is...
It's out there, and then people just don't want to learn. So like, as a founder, if you need to do a logo, and a logo costs $10,000 to hire like a world-class designer. And then 99 designs or whatever will do it for $200. And you have no money. You can watch a video and you can make a logo that's like a 6 out of 10. And then if you spend another day, you'd make a 7 out of 10. And the person who you paid $10,000 would make a 9 out of 10. You know what? Good enough. Get the 7 logo out there. Let's get the company going. Let's run some more tests. Yeah. And then I have founders who are like, I couldn't, we have no money left, and can you give us another $100,000 because we need to do this and that? And I'm just like, well, why don't you just learn the shit yourself? You have time. Learn to code, learn to do some Photoshop, learn to do some UX design, learn to sell. I mean, what else do you have going on? What are you going to Coachella? TEDx?
Burning Man?
Burning Man's okay, that's pretty good. You might have a mind-opening experience that gives you your next vision of what you should do, but too much web summit at sea, Rise, whatever. By the way, Rise is going to be like $4,000, and then they're going to discount it to $2,000. I don't mean to diss other conferences, but like don't fall for that bullshit. Like and pay $3,000 for a ticket. Like put that money towards your startup. Come to my event. You have a free ticket waiting for you. I don't mean to fuck with the other. I don't know if they're a sponsor or whatever, but this is a giant scam. Like, my founders come to me like, oh, we got accepted to Web Summit. And I'm like, you got accepted? There's 40,000 people in a trade show area with like a little like pizza box with their laptop on it. And they're like, yeah, we got accepted. And they loved us so much. Instead of 12,000, they only charged us 6. Are your customers there? They're like, yeah, there's a ton of investors there. I'm like, there's a ton of investors on Sand Hill Road too. Like, just put the $6,000 towards acquiring customers. Don't waste your money on this bullshit. Don't get distracted. Startups are about a repeatable process, delighting users with a great product that solves problems and delights them, and that's repeatable. Just like, get focused, right? There's a big focus issue that I think a lot of people have. They get distracted. And, I've been really working with a lot of my founders to stay singularly focused on their mission and not having mission drift. Most people get like some level of traction, like, oh my God, you're not gonna believe this. We got 7 new customers this month. I'm like, That's incredible. How much are they paying? Like, they're paying like $500 each. I'm like, oh my God, it's incredible, $3,500. I'm like, oh my God, okay, great. Tell me more. They're like, yeah, so we're going to do an enterprise version of that same thing, and then we're going to sell the data, and we're going to white label it, and we're going to translate it into Spanish. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Can we go from 7 to 70 first and get to $35K a month in revenue? And then we'd be break even, and you have to raise money. I'm like, no, we want to work on like 20 meaningless features that nobody asked for. But what, I don't, it's like, just stay focused, right?
Yeah, I did that in my second startup, the meaningless features thing. But anyway, that's a whole other
I call
story.
it the feature death march.
I think you're the guest tonight. But
feature death march.
There's a lot of people in the room tonight that are founders that are probably here to find out what's the best way to go about getting angel investment. But before we jump to that, I want to just talk a little bit about...
Spoiler alert, email me.
I want to talk a little bit about bootstrapping versus risk getting some angel investment, right? I've seen people try to get a bunch of angels together to raise, a couple of $100,000, and it's taken them 9 months, and all of a sudden, things have moved on, maybe they've lost a co-founder, bootstrapping versus getting that angel investment, what do you think?
Yeah, I go through this in the book a bit. The bootstrappers and the sweat equity folks are the best founders, and the worst founders are the check writers. Let me explain the difference. The sweat equity people are people who have skills, and they sit down and they build something, they test it, and they may have a day job and they're doing this at night on the weekends, or they may have saved up a little money and they're just going to work on it for 3 months off their savings. But it's a developer and a designer and a sales executive. You can see he's doing email. He's got to get those sales calls in. Totally oblivious. Hey, how you doing? I came all the way from San Francisco. A little respect over here. Who are you emailing? Come on. Are you playing Candy Crush? Come on. Give me the phone. Anyway, those sweat equity people are critically, they get it. Then you have bootstrappers. Bootstrappers are similar but different. Bootstrappers might say, you know what? We got a sales guy, a designer, and a developer, and we got the company I left. I know they have some work they need to get done. Let's do some work for them. That's custom work, but kind of this code base will be ours, and then we'll kind of morph that into a product. So we'll kind of use your money to build something over here, and they're not super focused, but they're not burning money. They'll probably break even, they're super things. So they're both awesome. Then you have a group of people over here who are like, we're going to change the world if you give us money. It's like, so you're not going to start until you do. It's like, yeah, nobody will come work for me. I'm like, okay, well, guess what? You just triple disqualified yourself. 1, you have no skill. 2, you have no passion because you're only willing to get started on this if somebody anoints you with a check. And 3, you don't have the ability to convince anybody to be your co-founder who has skills. And so many times I come in and it's like, I'm an idea guy, I'm CEOing, and I am really good at strategy. And I'm like, okay, you're 3 dipshits who are never gonna get anything accomplished. Nothing's gonna get done here. So why don't the 3 of you go get a job, save money, and while you're there at night, just like I learned how to hit the tennis ball, learn a skill that will help you when you start a company. But people are just like, no, why would I do that? And then I literally have had founders who, and this is where angel investors can make a big mistake in investing in non-technical founders or non-product driven founders, non-sales driven founders, founders without skill, because they give them $250,000, they take it, they hand it to a web shop, that, no offense to web shops, they're making a living too, but they build the app, they come back, the app doesn't work, then they go back to the investors and they're like, oh yeah, no, we built an incredible app. It's like, oh, who built it? It's like, yeah, those guys over there. And then, oh, okay. And then, well, what did you learn? Oh, we learned X, Y, and Z, and we need to do A, B, and C now. I'm like, okay, we'll do A, B, and C. They're like, give us more money. And then we'll give it to the web shop, which is super inefficient, and we have no knowledge. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Oh, I'm going to TEDx. I'm going to Summit at Sea. I'm going to fucking Coachella, right? And I can fucking spot these guys in a minute now.
Do you think they're reading TechCrunch and Mashable too much? They read, there's always these articles in those wires that say, two guys in Seattle raised $10 million on an idea.
Yeah, what happens a lot is, this is another founder distraction thing. They see some weird thing that occurs, and they don't understand it. So therefore, they apply it to their own inability to perform in the world. And they're like, well, fuck these guys at Bird. Like, they had a $50 million valuation at 300. Now they're worth $1 billion. Wait, it's $2 billion? And for an electric scooter, I have an electric scooter. Fuck those guys. But it's like, okay, but you don't have any of the data. What if the data shows that the scooter pays itself back in 30 days, and then they print money from there? What if the data show, what if the data shows that people are using the scooters, the average user uses it 18 times a month, and it becomes their primary mode of transportation? Like, you don't know what's going on there, nor should it matter to you. You're distracted. It's like I meet founders who have Trump, derangement syndrome, and they're just going crazy talking about Trump all day on Twitter, which I understand. I did it for a week, and I was like, oh, I have Trump derangement syndrome. I got a prescription. So, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, point is, stay focused. People get very unfocused.
Yeah. Why don't we switch over to questions from the audience? Sean, are we all good with those to go? Fantastic.
Any question? And by the way, if you could include 2 or 3 plugs for your startup, law firm, and/or executive recruiter, and then ask me what I think of your company, that would be the perfect question. I'm sure everybody would enjoy that. Just kidding.
Oh, you're gonna go.
Do you want to do microphones or scream?
Oh, no, we've got the questions up here. So first question is, you're quite close to Elon Musk. What do you think about his recent tweets taking on the journalists?
Let's see. Camera's on. All right. I've talked to him about it. I won't talk about what we've talked about it. But there are 2 sides to this story. One, if you've ever been the subject of journalists on a regular basis, which I have been at different points in my career, you can be amazed, or if you're a subject matter expert, and you read a story and you're like, oh my God, this journalist doesn't actually understand the subject. And so you lose a little bit of faith in certain publications, and there's a lot of variability. But when it's about you and you know things are patently wrong, it can be a little frustrating. And then when you see other journalists pick up a fact that's wrong in one publication and they don't fact check it, it's going to be incredibly frustrating. And what's happening in journalism is, because they're not making any money and they're cutting costs, they're doing things like link baiting in a desperate attempt to try to get more traffic. Well, link baiting, the headlines that work best are the ones that are the most outrageous, which means they're kind of the least truthful. And this is leading to a lot of frustration on the side of the subjects of stories. And there's no fact-checking left, with the exception of the top publications. And most stories in the New York Times don't have a fact-checking, even the New York Times don't have a fact-checking department calling. I know, because I've been in New York Times stories, and nobody calls me and tells me I'm in the story. They don't quote me in the story. They just pick up some fact. They assume it's correct. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And then you have the other side, which is there's a lot of journalists doing really incredible Pulitzer Prize winning work. Like, I just had John Carreyrou back on my podcast, who broke the Theranos story, which was an absolute, complete, utter fraud. As I predicted 2 years ago, this would be an Enron-sized fraud, except instead of just energy being traded and fraud there, it's people's health and their blood tests, and they're making health decisions based on it. I mean, it's deranged. This woman was deranged. So there's 2 sides here. It's not one thing. I don't think Elon is serious about rating journalists. I think it was kind of a joke, Pravda, like Russian, Putin, the Russian hack, Trump, fake news. I think it was kind of a joke. Yeah. But I don't think I also don't think that's the fight Elon should be fighting. He's got enough work to do, and I also think it's unproductive, because I think by and large journalists are trying to do the right thing, and I know for certain that Elon's trying to do the right thing, save humanity. So And that's one of the dangerous things about what Trump and Putin try to do, which is they try to make you not trust journalists. They make you try to not understand what the truth is. They don't want you to know their position. They want to change their position every day and just create massive amounts of confusion. That's the whole strategy, because if they're making massive amounts of confusion and you can't tell what the truth is, you give up. And then you forget about Russia, you forget about Mueller, you forget about the 20 indictments, you forget about Manafort, Cohen, and all these other corrupt scumbags.
Just on Elon, a lot of startup founders look at successful founders and they look at them as these kind of genetically morphed superhumans, and once you've met enough of them, you realise they're not. But what is it about Elon that sets him aside, do you think? Or is he just normal? He's just another founder having a go like everybody else?
No, he's not normal. No, I mean that in a very good way. Like, I think he doesn't have the fear gene that most people have, so he is willing to take huge risk. He also happens to be a great engineer, and his work ethic is second to none. Like, he really is indefatigable, and he's got a strong fortitude, and that we talked about resiliency earlier. There's very few people I've seen who have that work ethic, but also a brilliant engineer. I mean, he doesn't get any credit for being like a brilliant engineer. He's always been an engineer. He's been a physicist. He's an engineer. He's smart. Yeah. But taking on those big problems and then not giving up. I mean, Tesla and SpaceX are like 12, 14-year overnight successes. It's pretty funny. Like, people are just. There was a time when we would go to parties and people were like, "Oh my God, you're Jason Calacanis." I'm like, "Yeah, it's my friend Elon." And they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" They're like, "Well, I'm working on a car company." Like, "Do you make movies?" "No." "Fuck you." We both lived in LA. It was just like, if you don't make movies, they're just like, "Well, what are we talking to you?" And now it's crazy. Like, people, I walk down the street in San Francisco, once every 2 or 3 blocks, somebody says hi to me, or I want to take a selfie or something like that. If you walk down the block with Elon now, it's just nuts. And people want to talk to him about physics. Like, they just want to stop and talk about physics. And it's like my personal nightmare. Can you imagine, you finally get famous, and then the people who want to talk to you are physics nerds?
Not why he did it.
It's like, kind of cool if, I don't know, NBA players wanted to stop you and be like, "Hey, want to talk about the NBA?" "Yeah, I'd love to talk about the NBA. Yeah, what's going on in the NBA?" Or something, I don't know. Cool. Actors, models, whatever, anything but physics nerds.
Nice. We'll get through these questions.
Yeah.
That's all right. So next one's from Sean. Sean, is Sean here?
It
might be that Sean. I'm a 34-year-old founder on my 4th startup. How do I get time to pitch to you?
Great question. So I'll take it as a more general question. You want to understand the target you're going after. Mm-hmm. So I've made it abundantly clear. Goldilocks zone, Goldilocks zone. You hear me say it all the time. Not too hot, not too cold. What you're trying to do, this is the worst possible place to try to get a pitch in. You could say hi, hey, whatever. Show a little interest in the investor. So if you said, hey, Chris Saka, I really enjoyed your Shark Tank thing, blah, 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 great. You made a little bit of contact. I'm working on a startup, would love to email you about it. Chris at Lowercase Capital works, I assume. We're doing this. And then if they say, yeah, great, maybe they want to talk about it a little more. And then what you're trying to, once they know who you are, you just want to get them that monthly update. And then they get the sense that you're not going away. The monthly update is the secret weapon. So what you do is you just email them, "Hey, Jason, great meeting you last night. I was the guy, blah, 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 blah. I was the gal, da, da, da. I'm working on the photo sharing app. Here's my last monthly update. As you can see, we're now at 17,000 daily active users." And then you get the next one, and the next one. And then you have the investor ask you to come by for coffee. And then that's how it kind of works, is you use traction with somebody like me.
And progress as well? The progress with those updates?
A chart. Yeah. Oh my God. What an incredible idea. A chart. We look at it. It's going up and to the right. Come by for coffee. But what people want to do is, my email box is filled with, "Hi, Jason. I was born in Atlanta. And then I moved to Chicago. My father was in the Navy, and I'm like, oh my God, this is person's autobiography. And then I scroll down sometimes to see at what point they're going to talk about their startup. And they're talking about the 3 competitors for their startup. I'm like, short email, link. So to get me, I'll tell you how Cafe X got me. I got an email. It said, Jason, I'm a huge fan of your podcast. On episode number 572, you said a product demo is worth 1,000 slides. Here's mine. What do you think? And it was a YouTube video. And I clicked it. And it was a robot making coffee. And I looked and I said, a robot making coffee in China. China. And I said, this could be huge. Tremendous. I'm going to put it in Trump Tower. And I wrote back, is this a joke? And he wrote back, no, it's my senior thesis. I made this thing. It's in Hong Kong University. And I wrote him back. And I just literally, one window over here, went over to the other side of my LG landscape monitor, my 3rd browser window, had his email on this one, had the YouTube video over here. I typed Starbucks locations, Starbucks revenue, I'm like opening tabs. Starbucks revenue, what do I'm on Statista, and I'm like looking at statistics and everything, and I'm like, holy fuck. This thing could be, you could put 1 or 2 of these between every Starbucks. There could be 4 times as many of these as there are Starbucks. And then I was like, well, how much of Starbucks is the rent? This thing takes up half the space. So I am like grinding on the business model. I don't need to meet with him. He made it. I know he can make it. He's motivated to make it, right? And then it's obvious to me that people drink coffee all day long. And what's the 2 most expensive things in the coffee? It's not the milk or the coffee. It's the roof and the person making it. So you eliminated the top 2 costs? There's something here. There's a no-brainer. So I just wrote back, you should come to the incubator. And he said, how do I apply? And I said, you just did. You're in. And he said, okay. I said, do you have a bank account? Are you incorporated? He said, yes. I said, great. Send me your information. I'm going to send you $25,000 to start on this date. We didn't meet in person. Because I knew immediately that this is going to work. And if it doesn't work for him, it'll work for the next person who does it. If you have the goods, show the goods. People who have the goods, people who have the data, people who have the metrics are like, boom. People who don't are like, I was born in Atlanta. Then we moved to Chicago. So you just have to be careful of when you approach these investors, because if you don't approach them until you have the goods, right? Build something, right? Like, so like you're in the perfect position. You got this nice thing. It's like, okay, but what you got a mock-up of this timer, and then you got the really good-looking one. That's the 2.0 on the screen.
1.0. This is a 0.1.
Okay, you got the 0. That's the 1, whatever. So he's like, okay, and he's got 30 people have bought it. How many people are going to buy it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on, 10. Come on, you cheap fucks. Come on, 20. Let's get him to 50. Buy it, man. All right, great. So now you're at 50. Gets 50 of it. Gets a couple of good reviews. Yeah, then you could start looking for it. But don't just blindly email people. If you know this is about getting shit done, then I would make your list of angel investors and look for who are into productivity stuff. Look for who is already invested in productivity software and work backwards. So you can email them. And when you email them, don't cut and paste the same thing. It's not a numbers game. It's a relationship game. And it's a performance game. So say, Jason, or hey, Tim Ferriss, I know you angel invest, but you said you're taking a pause on it because you wrote a blog post last month that said you were no longer angel investing. However, I know that because I've read the 4-Hour Work Week. You understand the Pomodoro theory of 20-minute sprints. I've made something. At the very least, I would love to send you one, but ideally my goal is to have you as an investor or an advisor to the company, which I would love to give you 1% as an advisor. I'm sure you don't need to do this, but I really think I can change the world and make people more productive using your techniques and my technology. What do you think? Boom, thank you. But it's not rocket science, people. I'm showing interest in Tim. bringing it back to me, showing interest in Tim, bring it back to me. You understand?
Yeah. That's cool. I love it.
It's very simple. All right, let's take another question.
Next question. Disappeared off there, but that was a single founder versus founding team. Do you care?
Again, if you have incredible performance and it's a huge opportunity and you're super talented, it doesn't matter. Elon's a solo founder. Henry from Cafe X is a solo founder. Google had 2, Facebook had 1, Twitter had 7. It's like all these companies have a different number of founders.
Yeah.
I've met 7 different founders of Twitter. It's like, hi, I'm Biz. I'm Jack. I created it. Ev, I created it. I was the receptionist. I created it. So anyway, it doesn't really matter. But if you're solo, it does matter to some people. So Y Combinator had a really good observation early on. We only want developers as founders, and we want 3 of them, 2 of them, 3 of them. So they would not have people accepted to Y Combinator because they have no technical co-founder, and they're a solo founder. They say, go find another founder, go find a technical person to add. The reason is, those companies tend to not die as often as the ones who just have the CEO CEOing. So all they're thinking about is protecting their investment. So if you show up and you're like, hi, I'm the CEO, I'm the idea person. This is my partner. She worked at NASA. She is a sysadmin who knows how to scale our technology and did AI. And then here is my top salesperson who worked at Salesforce and sold $15 million in Salesforce seats. We're going to build It's like, okay, you put credibility on either side of you, it makes it much easier to get the meeting because you have the logos.
How much money did you lose on the big game poker show?
There's 2 big hands there. One with Daniel Negreanu is the one we're talking about because that's the one I won. I won't talk about the one with Doyle Brunson. He hit a set. I had kings. It was brutal. But the Daniel Negreanu one was great because he's the biggest talker in the business. Type Daniel Negreanu Calacanis. That was a $135,000 hand. Mm-hmm. I won it. That was not the biggest hand I've ever been in. I was at a very big hand of poker in Los Angeles, and the night before, I'm reticent to tell these stories because they're very large numbers, but fuck it. I'm tired. It's a good story. And you should understand, I play with like a certain amount of money. That's my bankroll, and I'm up, and I'm not going to like
Sell a farm, yeah.
Exactly. So just put everything in context. So anyway, I lose $70,000 one night. It's the worst poker night I ever had in my life. It is a lot of money. Even if you have a lot of money, it's a Tesla, You're grinding your teeth. I came home to my wife. I was like, I lost 9 hands in a row. Because I keep track of these things. I don't drink when I play. I take it serious. And she's like, well, I was like, I don't understand it. I was ahead on like 7 of the 9 hands. Makes no sense. She's like, well, statistically, does it make sense? I'm like, no, it makes no sense. Like, if you lose 9 in a row, it's like, and you're ahead, like 50% chance, 25, 12, 6, 3, 1.5, 75 basis points, 35 basis points, 20 points. She's like, well, that's like 1 in 500 games. Have you played 500 sessions of poker? I'm like, of course I have. She's like, all right, well, you were due for this train wreck. It's going to happen statistically. I was like, you're right. She goes, are they playing tonight or tomorrow? I said, yeah, they're playing tomorrow. She's like, go back.
Wow.
I go back. I'm stuck with 70,000 again. Motherfucker. And I'm like, this is not a good situation. I don't want to go back to my wife. She's understanding, but this would be really bad. So I am like trying to play the best poker of my life. And these guys know I lost the night before. It's the same crew. Some of them have been playing straight through, in fact. These guys are maniacs. Anyway, I'm getting pushed around. And I said, it's 5 in the fucking morning. And I know this guy has like got it in for me because he's just been hammering me and he beat me the night before. And I just waited and waited. I started playing some very non-traditional hands. I hit the hand very well. And I just let him bet into me. And this was like a $250,000 hand. It was like the largest hand of poker I ever played. I won it. And then I came back. So I came back a $150K winner. Even with the $70K I lost the night before.
Yeah.
I was like, I told you you'd do that. Then I just gave her the check.
Very supporting wife you've got there.
But I stopped actually playing in that game and those that level of high stakes games.
Yeah.
Because I realized I was starting to go down a road where it was more exciting for me. And I was like, oh, I'm building up a tolerance like a drug addict, and like I don't want to go down this road because there's only like 1 or 2 more games left. Like there's the game with the guy who did Cirque du Soleil, Guy Liberté. There's Guy's game, and then there's Macau. And if I go to Guy's game, it's going to be like too calm a game. If I go to Macau, I'm going to have to put my entire net worth on the table. Like, those guys are playing with tens of millions of dollars on the table. It's fucking crazy. And I just self-regulated. I was like, I got to stop this. It's like, I cannot be at 5 a.m. playing for a Bentley. It makes no sense. I need to be back in the startup game focused on that, like investing in companies.
Yeah, doing some different bets, right?
Well, and that's, I think the big lesson is like, if you look at startup gambling, you lose a lot of hands, but the ones you win, the implied odds of what you could win are greater than you can in a poker game. Because in a poker game, there's 10 people if there's 9 people in the game and each person has $10,000, there's 90,000 in potential. If everybody went all in and you won everything. But so that's only 9 times your money. But in startup land, you could be 90 times your money, 900, 9,000 times your money if a company becomes Facebook. So,
Last couple of very quick questions. Is this from
Lightning
DK?
round.
Is this from you? Yeah. So how do you perceive Australia as a source of deal flow?
We're going to find out.
I know you pretty much say that you can't
why
make
I'm
it
here.
outside of the valley. So
No, I didn't say that. I said if you, as an angel investor, do you need to be in the valley? Yes. Because the best deal flow and all the top founders around the world will be in the valley at some point raising money. So as an investor, you must have access to those deals, either by living there or coming there every 2 weeks. In fact, I've only lived in the valley for 4 years. Most people think I've been there forever. I lived in LA, and I would come up to the valley every other week or every week and make investments. A great founder can come from anywhere. So to be clear, we're here because we're going to throw the event, meet everybody, do events like this, have breakfast. We'll be back next year as well. Hopefully we meet some people this time. We start tracking them, see how they're going. The high art of startups today, keep your company in Sydney, keep it in Toronto. Put an office in Silicon Valley. Get that money and talent. But don't have the incredible expense of having 50 salespeople in the highest rent district on the planet. Keep your sales team in Toronto or Arizona or Melbourne or Sydney or wherever. So my perception here is, I'll let you know what my perception of the company is after, but there are 2 companies we've been already looking at ahead of this event in Sydney to invest in. So and you have Canva here,
Yes.
which that's a huge miss for us. I found out about Canva 2 years ago and I just never called them.
in fact, we had one of the founders here from Canva this year. Here at Startup Grind, which was great.
That's a special company, apparently.
It was funny because I'd met some people that had invested in Canva, and we were talking about the valuation. It's $1 billion company now, and I was like, yeah, but for the revenue, I don't get the valuation. And they
What's the
kept saying
revenue?
to me,
50, 100?
Yeah, around 50. Yeah.
20 times?
Last published, it was over 30. So, yeah. So
It's high, it's rich.
But there was 2 things they said.
But what's the speed at which it's growing?
You don't know when they switch on more monetization. The other thing they said to me is you got to meet the founding team. And it wasn't until I met the founding team with these 3 kind of quite unique characters, a hustler and then a technical person and then a kind of front person. It was a very interesting team. That was
An evangelist, a CEO, and a developer.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Beautiful. Well, why don't we finish up on that note? I think that's pretty cool. I really want to thank you for coming down to Sydney. We certainly cherish and celebrate any events or people that build a bridge, across the Pacific between Australia and the Valley. So please give it up for Jason Calacanis.
Thanks for having me.
So Jason is pretty tired, so I'm not sure how long he's staying around for, but he might be around just to answer a few more questions about poker or startups.
I'll sign your books if you go to the beach and collect them.
So I think we still have some food
That's
left.
the best story I've ever heard from somebody who didn't want to buy the books. That was brilliant.
I paid for the book, so that was no problem.
That's it. You're sticking to the story. I like it.
Yeah.
You're like, we told Jason we'd buy his book, but literally it fell off this shipping container. We didn't take this picture from India and the Indian Ocean from 1987. Nope, this happened right off the Gold Coast.
He lives near there, so pick them up.
So guys, please network. There's some drinks still going. Hopefully there's still a little bit of food left. Meet some new people, exchange some ideas, and hopefully I'll see you again in the next Startup Grind. Thanks very much.